Hello Menachem, I trust that you are doing well. We are here, it is officially winter here in South Africa. It's cold, as you can see, I got my jersey on. It certainly has picked up here. I hope that you're doing well, and I'm very, very excited to be jumping on this image review for you. Covering a couple of images from our India trip. I can't believe it's already 2 months ago that we were in India, experiencing some unbelievable memories while we were out there, whether it was tigers, good laughs, and a really, really good time in general. So thanks so much for sharing these images with me. And with all of that being said, I'm going to do my best to give you a little bit of constructive feedback today, running through some of your images, and hopefully you can take one or two things away from that. So with that being said, let's jump straight into it. So like I said, Menachem, thank you for sharing these images with me. And first up over here, we have this beautiful photo of this leopard in here. Now, what I love about this image, I love how it captures the secrecy of leopards in general. And I mean, as you would remember, this leopard, this female was the mother of that black leopard, which I think was an incredible experience for all of us. I know Tanya really enjoyed this one. But I love how you've really captured the secrecy of this female. We did struggle to get a clear shot of them throughout our time there, all of the sightings that we had. And this kind of depicts that experience that we had with them. So with that in general, one thing that I would possibly suggest here is I'm just going to try and get this leopard onto the center point. So first thing I'm going to do here is just going to bring up this, the crop over here very, very slightly, bring that leopard into the middle. And now what I want to do is potentially just try and increase the contrast that we have of this leopard. When I look at it immediately, I see very similar contrast between this leopard and potentially, let's say, this area over here, this dark area over here against the bright area. The same goes for that leopard, potentially here as well. So I just want to try and potentially just emphasize that a touch. So with that being said, I think what we could do is we could start off by just bringing up our brightness. That is going to just bring up the shadows, as you can see in that area. It's going to brighten this up. It brightens up that background a little bit, and then does bring out a little bit of details in our leopard. I'm then just going to increase the clarity a bit, which will bring in a bit more detail. As you can see here already, if I hold that in and out, you can see the details that's going to start bringing for us in those leaves over there. So just a touch, increasing that clarity. Now, to, like I say, emphasize that contrast there in the middle, what we could go and do here is, you'll remember this trick where we add our radial gradient, Menachem. So going to just make a nice big radial gradient. I like to make them nice and big there, just so that we're working on a very smooth feather. We can then go and invert that and now have a look. So we're working everything around the leopard, right? So like I mentioned to you, we want to decrease the contrast around here and make sure that the contrast within where the leopard is slightly more visible. So just going to bring up that very, very subtly. I don't want to overdo it so that we have an obvious vignette on this image. But I think just doing something like that, if I go hold this in an archer, you can just see how we've brightened those areas around the leopard. And now we've got that leopard slightly more contrasted again there. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm actually now looking at that image like that. I think that gives us a little bit more space to crop in a touch. That's just going to bring your viewers' eyes. It's going to get them sort of searching for this image. What is happening? What is this? And again, creates that type of seeking more, trying to find out more about this leopard, so to say, and trying to find out more about this image. But nevertheless, I love how you've captured this. I love how you managed to get that focus point on that leopard. Very, very well done in and amongst all of this foliage. So great image over there. Moving on to this, absolutely love this. Absolutely love this. I love how you've cropped this image to almost have natural vignettes around the entire leopard. And that is absolutely brilliant. I love how you've done that. And I think all in all, that is great. What I would look to do here is possibly just to bring up the highlights a touch. So I'm going to go touch up our highlights here. just bringing that up. It's really just going to create some good contrast here on the leopard, and draw your viewer's eyes there. So just bringing those highlights up a touch there, and I'm going to bring these blacks down ever so slightly. That's just going to once again darken a bit over here on these rocks, and therefore once again creating that contrast. Touching it up like that. I know you would have done your masking over here, so just a reminder on that. This will just nicely blur out that background again for us, and add the sharpness to these edges of this leopard. Remember, when we hold in our masking tool here, so if I bring this back to 0 and I hold in my option key on my laptop and then I pull the masking, essentially what we are doing here is we are defining the edges for Lightroom. So in other words, everything that is white defines the edges, right? So if I now begin to pull this up, as you can see, we are telling Lightroom that these are the edges that I want to apply the sharpening to. Of course, we want to make sure that our leopard is nicely highlighted there, and therefore then we can just go and add a little bit more of a touch up there. Possibly one other little thing that I do here, Menachem, is I just bring in a little bit of a vignette from the middle. So for example, simply just taking a radial gradient, making that nice and big, and from the middle working outwards, we just want to brighten that up ever so slightly. If we have a look at, like I say, the natural vignette that we have in this image, which is this darker tree over here, these darker rocks, we just want to brighten that up ever so slightly. So if we're looking at before and after, really just emphasizing this nice bright area on the leopard, pulling that up and leaving it like that. I love how you've got, or how you cropped it with the monkey down here in the bottom. Remember, we spoke about, when we were in India, we spoke about good distractions, bad distractions. And I do believe that in this case, it's definitely a good distraction in the image. With it lying on the edge of our screen, it's bound to draw your viewer's eye. But in this case, it draws the viewer's eye to come and see what is going on here. What on earth is this fluff ball over here? And just adds to the greater story of the image. So very, very well done on how you've cropped that. And I think that works very, very nicely. I love it. Moving on. Oh, these spotted deer, aren't they just stunning, stunning animals? I love how you've captured this, Menachem. And once again, I think what we have here, this female could be labeled potentially as a distraction, a bad distraction. And it would have, ideally, we would have liked to have had that frame going just past her over here. So in that case, if you possibly do still have the raw image, just go double check your cropping on this image, and you could potentially be able to stretch it out over here, just to make sure that you're not clipping her off. In this case though, specifically of the image that you've sent me here, I am going to go and change this to a portrait, because I do believe that is going to complement this image very, very well. So if we go and do something like that, just going to move it a bit more to make sure that our edges are nice and clean. And all of a sudden, something like this draws you straight into this beautiful deer and emphasizes him. There's not too many places to go in this frame, which is great. In terms of our edit, I like how you've edited. I like how you've brought the shadows out on him. There's beautiful, beautiful details all around over here. One thing that is pulling my eye a bit is this small little light over here. So just going to go and remove that quickly with the spot removal. Make that nice and small, and just click over that. There we go. Problem? No problem. Menachem, very, very little I'll do to this image. I like how you've gone and, like I say, brought out the shadows and the details on him. And with our background, I'm assuming you might have shot this at 2.8. Let me just see. In fact, 7.1. That was with the 800 millimeters though. So that would have increased that depth of field and worked that really nicely. Potentially what we could do, just to emphasize that blurred out background, is if we go and take a linear gradient over here, we're going to make that nice and big, and I'm just going to push that back to the top, because essentially what I want to work on here, I just want to work on that background a touch. So if I were to place our linear gradient over there, I'm going to go and subtract our subject, which should hopefully get rid of him. It looks like it has done most of it. I'm just going to go with some objects as well over these antlers. Let me go. Let's say 66%. That should be a bit better. Yeah. So just want to go and rub over these antlers over here, so that when we do apply this edit, it's not going to affect them too much. There we go. Let's just do the same on this side as well. Subtract with objects. Pull that down over there. And then there we go. So now it's removed the edit from his antlers. And what I'm going to go do here, Menachem, just to emphasize that blurred out background, making sure that the sharpness of this image is really, really drawing the viewer's eye to the deer. I'm going to go to our clarity. If I go extreme, I'm just going to pull that down a touch, and you can see that's really just going to soften out that background more, get him standing out. And we can also just bring down that dehaze a touch, which is going to brighten up that background ever so slightly. Now if we just go and hold that on and off, you can see how we've made such a subtle change there, just to push your viewer's eyes back down to this guy's face. Nevertheless, stunning image. I love it. Having a look now, we could deal with this as well. So we could either go and deal with that with a crop. So we can pull it in this side a touch and do the same on this side ever so slightly. I don't want to overdo it, because I would preferably like him to be pretty central of the image. So in that case, if we have to, we could always just go and remove that with a slight spot removal. So around about there, once again, just working our spot removals and getting rid of that. Something like that should do all right. There we go. All of a sudden, beautiful, beautiful image, and very, very well shot. Well done, Menachem. Moving on, this leopard. Wow, what a morning. What a morning. 3 leopards, 1 sighting. I don't think it gets much better than that. Well, I mean, when you're in India, tigers are, they're decent. But this was a very special morning nevertheless. First thing that I noticed here, Menachem, is I certainly think we can bring up the shadows on this leopard a bit more. I'm noticing this, this tree that just caught your frame over here. So with that in mind, going to try and bring that in a touch and kind of get our leopard there into that bottom right sort of third over there. And then we're going to try and work it from here. I love the foliage here, because what we have is naturally we've got some nice bright oranges, and we have these beautiful greens, beautiful complementary colors. And with that in mind, I think we can work something really nicely. So just once again, like I say, you could possibly go in with some brushes. So potentially on your original edit of this, just go and work some brushes on here. You obviously don't want to overdo it, because there is a natural shadow over here, so you don't want to go to the point that you manipulate it unnecessarily, but rather just to the point that we can bring out some of those details over there and make sure that that is popping on this leopard. So possibly what we can do, I do get a feel that the image is ever so slightly too warm here. I think by cooling it down a touch, we're just going to bring those greens back into play really, really nicely at the top there. So just bringing our temperature down a touch. You can have a look here. If we were to bring up these shadows, all of a sudden you're bringing out the details in that leopard really, really nicely. So definitely bringing up the shadows in him. And remember, like I say, blacks, shadows, highlights, and whites, those two separately go hand in hand. So just working them opposite to always hold that contrast in your image. So just bringing down my blacks again ever so slightly. It would be a great place here to once again work your masking. You don't want to apply your sharpening to the entire image, but rather bring that up by holding in your option key, define those edges for Lightroom, and then you can go ahead and apply your sharpening. And once again, what I would do here is certainly a radial gradient with the vignette. The vignetting with the radial gradient generally works really well, especially when your subject isn't central. Of course, Lightroom does have the options in and between your editing, your effects, where you could go and add the vignette over here. However, I find that when my subject is slightly off center, it's much easier then to go with a radial gradient and work it more specifically like that. So I'm just going to go and invert this once again. And remember, the thing that's more than likely drawing our viewer's eye in this image is contrast. There's a lot happening. If we look at the image, and I take this away, lots of darks, lots of brights. So we want to make sure that the most of that contrast is falling on our leopard as much as possible, right? So we have inverted this radial gradient. What I'm going to go do is I'm just going to brighten it up ever so slightly. That will take out a bit of the contrast in and around here, and it will just ensure that this dark patch over here is drawing us to this leopard. And once again, that nice little bright patch on that leopard is worth emphasizing as well. So could go in with a slight little brush, very, very subtly in and around this bright area here. Just going to go very, very dirty brush over here. Literally, Menachem, pulling up our exposure here a touch. It's just going to create a nice bright area on this image. And if we look at our before and after, you can see how we've cooled it down. We've gotten rid of a little bit of the contrast up here, and just making sure that we emphasize that contrast a touch on that leopard. Very, very nice image. Absolutely love this. It's so typical of India. So typical. Very well done. This was awesome. This was absolutely awesome. As you can remember, us sitting and having lunch, and all of a sudden just chaos. I love this. And I think the fact that you had that 800mm lens on this day was an absolute score. So certainly very well photographed. And very, very well edited, Menachem. There's not too much I would do here. I love how you've got this river coming out of the bottom left corner over here. All of this contrast in the water is beautiful, and the way that we have this tiger falling on that contrast is absolutely brilliant. If we have a look at your crop over here, I'm just going to get to my rule of thirds. There we go. You could possibly just bring that down a touch, keeping that tiger on that rule of thirds. That will then also get rid of a little bit of this negative space here that isn't too necessary. And simply just having him like that, there is not much more I would do to here. Just getting this, let's get up our exposure a touch. And remember how the tone curve allows us to add a bit of contrast in some areas. Very, very subtle touch up there that I would look to make. But nevertheless, very well shot. A beautiful image, and you can be very, very proud of this. When you get some time, think about trying to do a black and white edit in this. I think it could work very, very nicely, but I'll leave that to you, and you can share that update with me. So very well shot, Menachem. Not too much more that I would do. Moving on to this. I love this image. This, if I remember correctly, this was a fleeting opportunity, one of those pick up and shoot as fast as you can. Well done for capturing it. I certainly missed this shot. You were way too quick for me, so well done. And this has come out really nicely. I like what you've done here, Menachem. It appears that you've darkened this background quite a bit, which is nice, because that creates some great contrast in the background there. And what I find is the bright areas on this gore is certainly pulling my eye. If I close my eyes and I look at this image, this is where I go first. And I like how this bright grass is up against this dark background, creating that good contrast and that good sharpness for us to look at first. But then you find that your viewer's eye might go off into the background here, which is, I think, perfect in this image, because it just shows off the forest a little bit. It shows off a bit of mystery, and I think that really, really works well. In terms of your crop, very, very well done on the crop. I like it. Have him on that bottom left, and you got rid of the road quite nicely, which is also really nice. Potentially what we could do, if you really wanted to, is you could just give him a bit more space to walk into, right? That kind of just creates that negative space for the animal to move into, and just balances the image out ever so slightly. I can see here that you've added a touch of contrast. That's very nice. If we look at our before and after, I can't pick it up here. But nevertheless, I see here. Let's see what happens. Potentially just bringing up the shadows a touch, Menachem, will make a slight little change over there to that image. And all in all, I think we can be very happy with that. Just a touch up on the crop, and all in all, great image. Very, very nice image. I like it. Not too much more that I would do there. Well done. All right, moving on to this image. This was beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And one thing that is standing out for me is, I find that I'm kind of leaning a little bit to look at the image straight. So what we could always go and do is, generally we encourage you to keep an eye on your horizon. So straighten your image based on your horizon. If we look at this image, obviously we don't necessarily have a horizon to work with. So in that case, what we can go and do is, if we go and grab this angle tool over here, I often like to just go and draw my sort of axis then on an animal's eye. So if we then close that off there, it does make it a bit tight at the top. So I just need to be conscious of that. So let's see if we pull it up a bit, something like that. I see what happens then though. So what you might have to go and do, Menachem, is go double check your original image. And I'm just going to bring that back to how it was, to there. What I would suggest is just go and double check your original image. Give yourself a little bit more space to work with on your crop. And then I would suggest that you go try and straighten it on this animal's eyes. Go have a look at the burst and see if you can potentially get anything else where you could work that in. That will then just bring a bit more balance to the image. It should get these antlers fairly in line with each other as well, which will then kind of just bring the image sort of into place. But nevertheless, I like how you've edited it. I like how there's some nice rich colors in here, some good contrast in here. If anything, we can maybe just bring up our exposure a touch, very, very subtly. I do also think that the grasses over here, the green grasses, as well as this blue, I think we could bring our temperature up. We could warm that up ever so slightly, very, very subtly, because that's going to start making the deer look like a bit of a orange Garfield or something like that. But very, very subtly, just making an adjustment there. And you can see how then all of a sudden we do get some beautiful colors. So I love this image. It's a great image and very, very well photographed. This is awesome. This is awesome. If I remember correctly, I think this was when we were viewing some spotted deer that had spotted a tiger off in the distance. So being able to capture that is so amazing, Menachem, because you often, what you get here is you get the alert deer, you get the ears all pricked forward, and that is very, very nice. One thing that is catching me over here that I'd suggest that we do try and fix is the crop. If you are able to, once again, on your original image, just try and bring in this deer here. However, what I am going to say is, because we are losing that deer, I would suggest that we do crop it in a touch here, and we just move it off as far as we can to avoid this one. So I'm just going to bring it literally just to the edge of that animal's shoulder over there, and all of a sudden now there's literally nowhere else for you to go in this image but these deer. And I love the fact that that is the case here. All I would look to do is I would pump in a little bit of contrast here. I'm going to pull down my darks and I'm going to bring up these whites. And lastly, if we bring up our shadows and we bring down these highlights and up the whites a touch, you're going to see how all of a sudden that just creates a little bit of contrast, very, very subtle contrast into the image. And we can be very, very pleased with that. Certainly, once again, a great place to add your masking. So double check that your masking is done up over here. We can define those edges for Lightroom. Let's add a bit of sharpness. And that will, once again, just bring the focus to this image. I mean, like I say, if you look over here, there really is very few places for you to go. And I like how because we've got the two species of deer over here, that creates that contrast once again within the image. And possibly one more touch up. Let's maybe just bring in a subtle linear gradient coming in from the bottom over here. So just going to pull that all the way down. And we can possibly just brighten that up a touch. Just to push our viewers' eyes once again to that darker area. And something like that, if we look at that before and after, you can see how we've just emphasized the brightness. We've brought up those whites. And I love how this just creates a bit of mystery. What are these deer looking at? What are they concerned about? And absolutely love it. And lastly, moving off to this tiger image. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I don't know about you, Menachem, but I've certainly come to realize that a tiger, it's certainly up there for me when it comes to the cats that we are fortunate to photograph out there. Between leopards, lions, cheetah, all of that. I must say a tiger does, I think, take the cake for me. And on this particular day, as you can remember, I think it was it was so rewarding once we did get these photographs, because we worked for it that morning. We really did work for it. And in and amongst the long drives, when we eventually came across these tigers, this was in fact the same tiger that we originally worked on that was in the water. So yeah, to have followed this family around and eventually having this young female coming out into the open, she put on a real show for us, and you managed to capture that really, really nicely, Menachem. So in this case, there's so little that I'd want to change in this image, because I love the total story that it's telling for us. In terms of this background, I love the beautiful blue hues in the background. This grass over here just kind of moving up to the tiger, and then having this tiger popping because of probably the aperture that she shot it at. Once again, you see that aperture, getting it as low as you could on this 500 at 7.1 just creates a beautiful depth of field playing here for you to work with. And if I'm looking around, there's probably two things that are pulling me away from this beautiful animal. One of them is the contrast down here and this contrast up here. So with that in mind, I wouldn't want to try and overdo it. And I think we could simply try and fix that with a crop, pulling down there, as well as pulling down over there. That kind of gets our tiger onto this middle plane, which is perfect, because then we have even space on the top, even space on the bottom, and that works out really, really nicely. And besides that, Menachem, very, very well edited, a great image, and I think all in all, this is a really, really beautiful portfolio of images that you managed to capture during our time in India. So well done. I hope that was helpful for you. And I hope that you can take some of this feedback. Like I say, go check out some of those images, possibly the originals. Double check if you can play around, give yourself a bit more space to work with on your crops. But in general, I think your understanding behind working your brightness, your sharpness, contrast, all of those things that we spoke about in India that hold visual mass in an image, I think you've really, really understood that, and it certainly shows in your editing. So well done. It's great to see, and I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope that was helpful for you. And if you have any more images, you're welcome to keep them coming my way, and I'll jump onto more of these for you. So nevertheless, thanks for your time, Menachem. And for anyone else who jumped on and enjoyed these videos, you are welcome to get in touch with either myself or any of the other Wild Eye guides, and we'll certainly jump onto these image reviews for you and hopefully help you out in your editing style, that you can take something away from it. So thank you for your time, and I will chat to you guys again soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.